He was not born a warrior. He was born like the rest of us, soft, distracted, pulled by 1,000 unimportant things. But in the mountains of Ishigane, the old monks whisper a truth few dare face. Laziness is not a weakness of the body. It is a fracture of the spirit, and every man must decide to mend it or to be ruled by it. This is the story of Ryonosuke, a young apprentice whose life was slowly collapsing under a quiet, invisible enemy. The weight of his own excuses, not a loud failure, a subtle decay, until he crossed paths with Master Gensei, a man carved from silence, hardened by discipline, and softened only by wisdom earned in solitude. What follows is not merely a training, but a dismantling of ego, of fear, of every soft corner inside him. This is the journey of a man who learns the ancient Stoic system the monks called Kage no Michi, the shadow path, a method for crushing the inner laziness that steals a warrior's purpose, a system for rising above the mind's noise and stepping into one's presence, a path for transforming weakness into unwavering mastery. Let this tale be a mirror, for inside Ryonosuke's struggle, you may see your own. Chapter 1. The Weight of the Unlived Life. The village of Ishigane woke slowly, as it always did. Lanterns dimmed. Smoke rose from clay chimneys. And somewhere inside this quiet mountain cradle, a young man slept through the morning he had promised to meet. Ryonosuke's room was small, bare wood, a thin futon, a half-folded robe on the floor. Nothing unusual, but the true disorder was inside him. He had vowed the night before, "I will rise with the first bell." A promise spoken with conviction, a promise broken before the sun even touched the rooftops. When he finally stirred, the world was already alive without him. Voices drifted from the market, the clatter of rice crates, the rhythmic tap of sandals on stone, sounds he once found comforting, now heavy with quiet shame. He rushed, dressing sloppily, tying his sash with uneven hands. His breath was disorganized, shallow, the breath of a man outrunning himself. He had failed a simple task, delivering grain to the carpenter before noon, simple, manageable, yet his mind had swallowed the morning in an ocean of later, that seductive lie that steals potential one drop at a time. As he walked through the village, he kept his eyes low. People nodded without really looking, accustomed to his half-effort, his almost potential, his soft avoidance of responsibility. But one pair of eyes did not look away. Old man Hachiro, skin like wrinkled parchment, spine crooked but unbroken, stood outside his shop sharpening a blade. His movements were slow, yes, but deliberate, intentional, the opposite of Ryonosuke in every way. When Ryonosuke passed, Hachiro's gravel voice cut through the air. "Boy," he said, "do you know what you waste every morning?" Ryonosuke paused, unsure if he should bow or flee. Hachiro pointed to his own scarred hands. "Strength, youth, time, all gifts you treat like scraps." The words were not loud, but they were sharp. Ryonosuke forced a weak smile, muttering something about being tired. "Of course," Hachiro replied. "The lazy are always tired. Their minds burn more energy avoiding life than living it." Ryonosuke felt the sting, not because the old man was cruel, but because he was correct. Science would later explain it. Avoidance triggers stress. Stress drains the brain, and the brain craves comfort to escape the discomfort it created. A vicious cycle, a shadow loop. But ancient men did not need neuroscience to know this truth. They felt it in their bones. Ryonosuke bowed his head and walked on, but the words clung to him like smoke in winter. When he finally delivered the grain, The carpenter shook his head with the calm disappointment of someone whose expectations had already died. "It's fine," he said, though it was not. "Next time, try earlier." The softness of the rebuke hit harder than anger ever could. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Ryonosuke returned home with a heaviness inside him. He sat on the steps outside his small dwelling, staring at his hands as if searching for the strength others seemed to see, but he could never grasp. For years he had lived like this, caught in a fog of almost, drifting between small comforts and even smaller ambitions. He'd avoided risks, challenges, anything that might demand the fierce clarity he feared he lacked. But tonight, something broke. Maybe it was Hachiro's voice. Maybe his own reflection in the still water near the steps. Maybe the quiet sense that he was becoming a man he would not follow, let alone respect. He whispered into the night, "I do not want this version of me." The air was cold. The moon rose like a pale witness, and far above the village, on the temple steps carved into the cliffs, a solitary figure stood in stillness, a shadow outlined by moonlight, a presence waiting, a path beginning, a warrior's system about to unfold. Chapter 2, The Silent Master and the Broken Discipline. The dawn that followed was unusually still, the kind of stillness that feels intentional, as if the world itself is inhaling, waiting for something to begin. Ryonosuke climbed the stone steps toward the cliffside temple, unsure why his feet carried him there. He only knew that something in him had shifted, and the village below suddenly felt too small for the questions rising in his chest. At the final tier of steps, he saw him, a lone man seated in seiza, unmoving, his back straight as a blade, a monk's robe wrapped around a frame carved by decades of disciplined practice, gray hair tied in a simple knot, eyes closed, yet unmistakably aware. Master Gensei. The villagers spoke of him in fragments, a warrior who abandoned violence, a sage who trained alone among clouds, a man whose silence could teach more than any loud master's voice. Ryonosuke approached cautiously, unsure whether to bow, speak, or retreat. But before he could decide, Gensei's voice emerged, low, controlled, without opening his eyes. "You climbed late." Ryonosuke froze. "Master, I didn't know you expected me." "I did not," Gensei replied, "but your spirit did." The words struck deeper than reason. Gensei finally opened his eyes, clear, sharp, unclouded, eyes that saw not the person standing before him, but the fragments within. "Sit." Ryonosuke obeyed, lowering himself to the cold stone. The silence between them stretched, heavy yet strangely cleansing. After several minutes, Gensei spoke again. "Your posture collapses. Your breath collapses. Your attention collapses. Therefore, your life collapses." He said it calmly, the way one might describe weather. Ryonosuke swallowed. "I don't understand." "You do," Gensei said, "but your ego resists understanding." A gust of mountain wind swept across the terrace. Gensei didn't flinch. Ryonosuke shivered. The master stood and motioned for him to follow. They walked through the temple grounds, bare courtyards, bamboo groves, gravel paths raked into gentle spirals. The entire environment seemed designed to expose one truth. Nothing hides in silence. Gensei handed him a bucket. "Fill this from the river. Bring it back without spilling." Ryonosuke nodded eagerly, relieved by a task he understood. He hurried down the path, filled the bucket, and returned quickly. Water sloshed over the rim as he moved, soaking his sleeves. When he set the bucket down, Gensei shook his head. Again. Ryonosuke frowned, but I brought it back. You rushed, Gensei said. You collapsed into haste because your mind fears stillness. Ryonosuke tried again and again. Each time, Gensei found fault. Too hurried, too unfocused, and too careless. By the fifth attempt, frustration burned in Ryonosuke's chest. Master, it is only water. Gensei's gaze became a blade. And your life is only time. Yet you spill that too. Silence, a deep one. Ryonosuke felt the truth pierce him. Every small task he had dismissed, every delayed morning, every promise he had let wilt. Gensei saw all of it, not through magic, but through pattern, the same pattern that governs every undisciplined man. Laziness is not your enemy, Gensei said. Fragmentation is. He tapped Ryonosuke's chest with 2 fingers. When your mind is scattered, your actions fracture. Discipline is not force. It is alignment. Ryonosuke lowered his gaze, ashamed, but Gensei gently lifted his chin. That shame you feel now, keep it. It is honest. It is a beginning. They walked back to the terrace in silence. For the first time in his life, Ryonosuke felt the subtle gravity of a real teacher, one who did not motivate him, praise him, or push him, but revealed him. As the morning sun climbed higher, Gensei spoke one final line. Control the small moments, Ryonosuke, or the great moments will control you. A seed of discipline took root in the young man's chest. Fragile, but alive. Okuno Chapter 3, The Battle Within the Shade. There is a moment in every warrior's training when the real opponent finally appears. It is not the master, not the mountain, not the task. It is the self. For Ryonosuke, that moment arrived 3 days after his first trial with Master Gensei, on a morning glazed with fog thick enough to soften the edges of the world. Today, Gensei said, we descend into your shadows. Ryonosuke didn't understand, not yet. The master led him along a narrow cliff path where mist crawled over the stones like living spirits. Birds were silent. Even the wind seemed hesitant, as if it knew this day belonged to something deeper. They reached a flat overlook, a ledge that faced the entire valley. Below, homes looked like tiny wooden toys. The river shimmered like a sword's edge. Gensei stopped. Sit, Ryonosuke obeyed. Close your eyes, Gensei commanded. He did. Now, call forth the voice inside you that keeps you small. The young man's breath quickened. He wasn't sure he could call it. It usually came by itself, uninvited. But the silence was long, and his mind began to stir. At first, the voice was faint, then clearer. You're not good enough. You always fail. Why try? Rest later, tomorrow. They expect too much from you. You are safer staying the same. Ryonosuke jolted as if something grabbed his spine. Gensei's voice cut through the fog. Yes, that one. The whisper that feels like you, but isn't. Ryonosuke clenched his fists. The voice grew louder the more he focused on it. A pressure behind his chest, a dark tightness behind his ribs. Master, he said through shallow breaths, it's uncomfortable. Good, Gensei replied. That is how you recognize the enemy. Ryonosuke felt heat rising in his face, an urge to move, to fidget, to escape. The instinct of the mind when it meets itself without distraction. The master paced behind him slowly. The ancient text, call it Kage no Ko, the shadow voice. Modern psychology calls it the default survival loop, a system wired to keep you comfortable even at the cost of your potential. Ryonosuke felt sweat build at his temples. Gensei continued, "Laziness is not the problem, it is only the symptom. Your true enemy is fear disguised as mercy. It whispers softness, but kills slowly." Ryonosuke's breathing began to shake. The voice inside him was now a swirl of excuses, shame, and familiar self-protection, like a storm formed from memories he never resolved. "Master, I can't stop hearing it." "You are not meant to stop it," Gensei said. "You are meant to see it." He struck his walking staff against a stone, sharp enough to snap Ryonosuke's focus outward. "Stand." Ryonosuke rose, legs trembling. Gensei stepped close, his presence calm but crushingly intense. "Every man carries shadows. The weak run from them. The strong ignore them. But the warrior listens without becoming them." He tapped Ryonosuke's forehead. "Your shadows feed on your avoidance. When you face them directly, they starve." Ryonosuke swallowed hard. The fog seemed to pulse around him, as if reacting to his inner turmoil. "Master, what do I do now?" Gensei turned toward the vast valley below. "You breathe, you witness, you endure. This is the second pillar of the shadow path. Do not fight your darkness. Illuminate it." Ryonosuke felt something shift inside. Not strength, not clarity, but the raw beginning of honesty. The kind of honesty that scars, then saves. As the fog slowly thinned, Gensei pointed toward the horizon. "Your true training begins today." A cold wind swept across the ledge, and Ryonosuke felt it for what it truly was. The first breath before battle. Chapter 4, Forging the Warrior Spirit. Transformation does not arrive like lightning. It arrives like heat, slow, relentless, reshaping what it touches. For Ryonosuke, the forging began before sunrise. The temple bell rang once, a deep, resonant sound that carried through the valley like a summons from something older than memory itself. He rose instantly, no hesitation, no negotiation with the old voice inside him. His body still ached from the trials of the previous days, but something in him had shifted. Discipline was no longer the enemy. It was the structure holding him upright. Outside his quarters, Master Gensei waited with a small torch. "Today," the master said, "we rebuild the man who lived inside your shadows." Ryonosuke bowed. He felt the weight of the moment, not dramatic, not heroic, but sacred. Gensei handed him a wooden staff. "Carry this with you, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. Every warrior needs an anchor." They walked into the freezing pre-dawn air. Frost clung to the stones like silver dust. The sky was still dark, a vast black bowl pierced by the last stars. Their first task, the mountain spring. The water was glacial, fed by melting snow, untouched by warmth. Steam rose from the surface like drifting spirits. "Enter," Gensei said. Ryonosuke hesitated only a heartbeat, then stepped in. The cold struck like a blade against his skin. His breath exploded from his chest. His muscles seized, but Gensei spoke from the shore, voice calm and steady. "Do not flee the sensation, observe it. Let your mind expand beyond your body." Ryonosuke closed his eyes, forcing his breath to slow. In through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. The cold did not vanish, but the panic did. A strange clarity began to bloom inside him, sharp, bright, alive. Gensei nodded with approval. "This is voluntary hardship." Ancient warriors used it to temper the spirit. Modern science merely confirms what they already knew. Stress becomes strength when chosen with intention. Ryonosuke stayed until his limbs numbed, then emerged with steam rolling off his skin. He felt lighter, not physically but internally, as if something unnecessary had been burned away. Next came the marches through the bamboo forest, not running, not meditating, walking slow, deliberate, each step placed with awareness. Your life moves too quickly, Gensei said. Your thoughts too chaotically. Slow movement teaches fast clarity. As they walked, bamboo stalks clattered softly overhead, whispering against one another like old prayers. For the first time in his life, Ryonosuke noticed the subtle details, the texture of the earth beneath his sandals, the rhythm of his breath syncing with footfalls, the way sunlight filtered through the leaves in shifting gold patterns. Presence, quiet, strength without intensity. After the march came ego-breaking work, raking gravel, sweeping long corridors, pulling weeds between stone cracks. Tasks small enough to insult the modern mind, but sacred through the lens of ancient discipline. Ryonosuke's shoulders burned, his palms stung, sweat traced lines down his back. But he did not complain, because for the first time, he understood. These tasks were not chores. They were mirrors. Every moment revealed a flaw, impatience, carelessness, drifting attention. Every correction forged a new piece of his spirit. Gensei watched him quietly. When the ego dies, the master said, the warrior is born. By midday, Ryonosuke felt something new inside him, not pride, not confidence, but alignment. His actions matched his intentions. His breath matched his body. His spirit matched his path. As the sun crossed its highest arc, Gensei placed a hand on his shoulder. You are beginning to understand the nature of strength. Ryonosuke bowed deeply, sweat dripping onto the stone. The forging had truly begun. Chapter 5. The Path Beyond the Self. By the time the leaves began to shift toward autumn gold, Ryonosuke had become a different presence within the temple walls. Not louder, not stronger in the physical sense, but anchored, a man whose movements carried intention rather than impulse. Yet Master Gensei knew the truth every ancient mentor understands. A warrior's transformation is only half complete when it serves only himself. So on a morning draped in a soft amber glow, Gensei summoned Ryonosuke to the upper courtyard, a stone terrace overlooking the entire valley. You have cultivated discipline, the master said, hands clasped behind his back. But discipline that ends at your own skin is still ego. Ryonosuke bowed. Then what remains, master? Gensei gestured toward the sprawling village below. Tiny houses, thin threads of smoke, the distant murmur of life. Responsibility, he said. The final trial is not endured in solitude, it is lived among others. Ryonosuke breathed deeply, sensing the shift. Previous weeks had been a war against internal shadows, but the next phase would be a confrontation with reality itself. Gensei turned and began walking toward the descending path carved into the mountain. Come, he said simply. They made their way down through winding trails, past moss-covered statues, past cold stone guardians whose faces had weathered centuries of storms. The air grew warmer as they neared the village, filled with the scent of rice fields and distant cooking fires. For Ryonosuke, the village felt unfamiliar, though not because it had changed. He had. People bowed as they passed, not out of reverence but in recognition. The once aimless young man who drifted through mornings half asleep now carried himself like someone awake in every sense. Gensei stopped near the heart of the village, where a small crowd had gathered. A cart lay overturned, its wheel broken. A farmer sat on the ground, clutching his leg, trembling in pain. Villagers whispered uncertainly, stepping back, waiting for someone braver or wiser to take initiative. No one moved. Gensei spoke quietly. "Observe." Ryonosuke understood without being told. Fear, not laziness, bound the crowd. Fear of responsibility, fear of doing it wrong, fear of being the one who must act. A fear he himself had lived in for years. Without hesitation, Ryonosuke knelt beside the injured farmer. "Your leg," he said gently. "Let me see." The man nodded, grateful and afraid. Ryonosuke examined the swelling, noticing the unnatural bend. A fracture, minor but painful. He looked to the villagers, voice steady and clear. "I need cloth for a splint and someone bring boiling water." People scattered instantly, relieved to be given direction. Gensei watched silently. Within minutes, Ryonosuke had stabilized the leg, lifted the farmer with controlled strength, and directed 2 others to help carry him to the healer's hut. Only once the situation settled did he approach Gensei again. "Master, I didn't think, I just acted." "That," Gensei replied, "is what happens when discipline becomes nature. You did not seek glory. You did not seek praise. You simply stepped into what was needed." Ryonosuke felt something warm rise in his chest, not pride, something deeper, a sense of connection to the world beyond his inner battles. Gensei placed a hand over his heart. "This," he said softly, "is the final formless enemy. The urge to retreat into the self. Conquering your shadows is only the beginning. A warrior must give his strength away." Ryonosuke listened, with presence, with humility, with a responsibility he finally felt equal to. The path was opening before him, one he had never expected, but was finally ready to walk.